My mother, a woman who once broke up another family, always tried to hide behind a veil of hypocrisy. She flatly refused the rightful alimony from the first wife, yet she didn't hesitate to make me drop out of school, forcing me to fend for myself early in life to earn a living when we fell into hardship. Eventually, I had only one path left: to seek out my biological father for help. But when the truth came out, what I received from my mother was not understanding, but bitter accusations. "A bastard like you just being alive is a blessing. How dare you dream of competing with the first wife's child?" And then, on the day Minwoo and I were both kidnapped, she didn't hesitate to abandon me, even casually uttering a cold remark: "Let her bear the burden of her own pathetic fate." When I ended up in a vegetative state, lying motionless on a hospital bed, it was Minwoo who sat beside me, calling my mother with such tender affection. "Mommy," she cooed. It was in that moment that I finally understood. The one with the illegitimate status wasn't me, but Minwoo. Our identities had been swapped long ago, and all this cruelty was part of my biological father's calculations. Opening my eyes once more, I returned to the moment everything began. The day she caught me secretly searching for my biological father. Years ago, I took you away from the Song family home without a single coin, just to avoid getting tangled up with them any further. But now, you shamelessly go begging Mr. Song for help. Don't you feel any shame? The moment I opened my eyes, the first thing I heard was Eunwoo's harsh scolding, laced with both disappointment and contempt. Her furious face was right before me, so close I could reach out and grab it, yet an indescribable joy surged within me. I was back. Back to that very day, the fated day I secretly sought out Cumin, hoping he would give me money for tuition, only to be unfortunately caught by Eunwoo. In my previous life, in this very place, she had rained down curses on me, then handed me a check, forcing me to repay every single cent, forbidding me from accepting any help from the Song family. I had no choice but to grit my teeth and accept. Afterwards, she shed tears, feigning sorrow, and gently advised, "Heirin, I don't want you to resent me. What happened between Mr. Song and me years ago was not my intention. I didn't take their money because I didn't want them to look down on us. I, naive and foolish, believed those words, but all that trust shattered on the day Minwoo and I were kidnapped. When the Song family was forced to choose who would be saved and who would be abandoned, it was Eunwoo who was the first to suggest discarding me, saying, 'Let that girl bear the consequences of her own sins.' At that moment, my heart turned to ice. What kind of mother could so nonchalantly abandon her own child? Was it simply because of a mistake that wasn't even mine? It wasn't until I lay motionless on a hospital bed, my consciousness hazy between life and death, that I witnessed Minwoo throwing herself into Eunwoo's arms, calling her mommy with a sickening sweetness. Eunwoo, radiant with a smile, gently comforted her. "Finally, that girl Heirin is out of the way. From now on, you no longer have to worry about your identity being exposed." It was then that the truth was revealed before my eyes. The one who truly carried the illegitimate status turned out to be Minwoo. Eunwoo abandoned me, not to atone for past mistakes, but to clear the path for Minwoo to ascend to a position that never rightfully belonged to her. Realizing that, my heart felt pierced by 1,000 needles, a deep-seated hatred seeping into my very bones. I wanted nothing more than to rise up right then, to tear those two hypocrites to shreds, but I could do nothing but lie motionless, helplessly watching them play their happy family charade beside my ravaged body. And it didn't stop there. They were so malicious that they even plotted to harm my biological mother, all to maintain the facade of their fake, happy family reunion. Thankfully, heaven had mercy, granting me another chance at life. This time, I wouldn't let them have peace. Blood for blood, a life for a life. I would make those wretched mother and daughter pay 100-fold. Right now, Eunwoo was still standing there, continuing to use that bitter, stinging tone that I could never forget, not even across 2 lifetimes. "Heirin, you bastard, your very existence in this world is a mistake. How dare you dream of taking what doesn't belong to you?" I couldn't hold back anymore. I immediately grabbed her arm and dragged her towards the window. "If that's the case, let's go to hell together." In that moment, I truly just wanted to end everything with her. If I couldn't live a normal life, I might as well drag her down with me. But Eunwoo panicked. She screamed, struggled, pushed me to the floor, then fled in a panic like a fugitive. I was left lying there, my chest heaving with rage, shivers spreading throughout my body. After a while, I struggled to sit up, bent down to pick up the shattered phone on the floor, and with trembling fingers, dialed a number I had known by heart for a long time. The moment the call connected, the yearning and resentment suppressed for so many years surged out, choking my throat and making it hard to breathe. I softly called out, my voice hoarse, "Mom." A slight hesitation on the other end, then a familiar, gentle voice resonated. "Heir, did you dial the wrong number?" That voice, just as I remembered, was warm, soft, and forgiving. Even though she knew I was the result of a forbidden affair, a stain of betrayal, my mother had never seen me as a burden. She was always gentle, always embracing me with unconditional love. But this very kind woman was eventually poisoned by the daughter she loved the most, Minwoo, along with Eunwoo, who secretly added toxins to her food and drinks for many years, leaving her no time to react when she finally found out. Even when she was on the verge of death, my mother only worried about Minwoo, fearing that she would be targeted by malicious people and unable to hold on to the Min family's legacy. Until her dying breath, she never knew that the one she was protecting was the very person who had killed her. I couldn't swallow that pain. Trembling, I choked back my sobs and recounted the entire truth to my mother, little by little, leaving nothing out. Madam Min was always a cautious person, every action carefully considered. That day, she didn't delay a second, immediately taking a private flight straight to the islands. As soon as she landed, she took me directly to the hospital, without hesitation, demanding a DNA test. Upon receiving the results, she didn't bother with the initial pages full of technical jargon, flipping straight to the final conclusion. When she saw the numbers clearly confirming their blood relationship, the woman who had always been as calm and serene as an unrippled lake finally showed a rare tremor. The hand holding the report clenched so tightly that her knuckles turned white, trembling slightly, whether from fury or shock, I couldn't tell. I lowered my head, my fingernails silently digging into my palms, an indescribable unease rising within me. Would this flimsy piece of paper be enough to outweigh the more than 10 years of affection between her and Minwoo? Each minute stretched on, long and agonizing, the tension suffocating. Just as my heart was about to plunge into the abyss of despair, a gentle, warm embrace unexpectedly tightened around me, enveloping the loneliness within my soul. From above, a choked, lingering voice resonated. "Heir, it's my fault for letting you wander outside for all these years." In that moment, all doubt in my heart vanished, leaving only an uncontrollable surge of self-pity. I burst into tears, choking out a single word, "Mom." She hugged me tightly, her voice resolute with a promise of retribution. "Heir, rest assured. Everything you've lacked for the past 18 years, I will make up for bit by bit, and all those who made you suffer will pay dearly." Though we had only just found each other, there was no awkward distance between us. That night, mother and daughter lay side by side on a large bed, holding each other tightly, as if trying to make up for all the days stolen by time. All my sorrow gradually melted away in my mother's gentle laughter. However, that warm atmosphere was quickly shattered by the piercing ring of a phone. I looked down at the screen, my eyes growing cold as I saw the name, Minwoo, flashing. Madam Min raised a finger, signaling me to stay silent, then calmly picked up the phone. On the other end, Minwoo's honeyed, spoiled voice immediately rang out. "Mommy, why aren't you home today? I miss you so much." In the eyes of outsiders, Minwoo was the precious gem of both the Song and Min families, a little princess cherished in the palms of Chairman Song and the Min group heir. Even though the two were husband and wife in name only, they still tried to maintain the appearance of a happy family, returning home every day to paint a picture of warmth for their beloved daughter. But Madam Min's absence today made Minwoo feel uneasy. Something urgent came up at work. I had to fly out to handle it immediately. Madam Min gently explained, her words soft as if coaxing a child, but her face was chillingly devoid of emotion. "All right then, Mom, remember to take care of yourself and don't forget to buy me a present when you come back." Hearing this, Madam Min offered a faint, fleeting smile. "Don't worry, the gift I've prepared for you will certainly surprise you." With that, she decisively hung up. The next morning, Madam Min and I took the earliest flight back to Jiangcheng. By the time the car entered the Jiang family estate, it was nearly 10:00 a.m. Before me stood a magnificent and opulent manor, towering on a high mountain, resembling ancient European castles. Every line, every small corner exuded an air of authority and mysterious coldness. Madam Min gently told me, "Heir, this is your home." Yet, in my previous life, I had never once stepped through that gate, because in this house there was someone who had taken everything from me. But now, everything was different. I had finally returned. As the Bentley slowly drove into the courtyard, the large gates automatically swung open, signaling the true owner's return. Not long after, Minwoo, hugging her favorite doll, ran out to greet us with a radiant face, her long hair flowing with her hurried steps. But when her gaze landed on me, her smile immediately froze and a shrill voice rang out, full of wariness. "Mom, who is this?" Madam Min turned to look at me, her eyes as gentle as morning sunlight, her voice soft and warm like a comforting whisper. "Didn't you always wish for a sister? Today I've brought you a surprise, the gift you've been longing for all this time." I slowly stepped out from behind Madam Min, bowing my head slightly and offering a shy smile to Minwoo, then gently began, "Hello, Minwoo, I'm Heirin, Eunwoo's daughter." The moment she heard that name, Minwoo's expression stiffened, her eyes flashing with a hint of panic. But a moment later, she immediately erupted in anger, yelling as if a deeply hidden wound had been struck. "That woman is the one who ruined our family's happiness. How can you bring her bastard child here, brazenly letting her into this house?" She still thought that a tantrum, like always, would force Madam Min to back down and kick me out. But this time, Madam Min was no longer easily swayed. Her face darkened, her voice cold as ice. "Minwoo, who taught you to scream so disrespectfully? An outsider would think you were born on the streets." That single sentence was enough to quell all resistance, silencing Minwoo instantly. She understood how fragile her identity was, most afraid of the truth being exposed, so from a young age, she had always tried to appear obedient and perfect in Madam Min's eyes. She never wanted to hear anyone say, "How come you don't resemble your mother at all?" But this time, those words came from the very mother she always tried to please. Minwoo, clutching her dress hem in panic, called out with a trembling voice, "Mommy, Madam Min didn't spare her another glance, simply turned to the butler and calmly instructed, "Prepare the room on the 3rd floor for the eldest young lady." The butler, slightly startled, glanced at me, but quickly concealed his emotions, bowing his head to respond, "Yes, madam." Before he could move, Minwoo's angry voice rang out from behind, stopping him. "I object." She glared at me, her voice filled with hatred. "Mom, no matter how kind you are, you can't let a lowly bastard like her take the best accommodation. The 3rd floor is the brightest, with the most beautiful view in this house. I've often expressed wanting to stay there, but Madam Min always quietly refused. Yet today, after just meeting her, you immediately decided to give that place to her. How can I accept that?" Madam Min slowly turned, her cold eyes fixed on Minwoo, her lips curving slightly, but the smile held no warmth. "Is that what you think?" Minwoo, not realizing the smoldering anger in Madam Min's eyes, still innocently pouted as always. "Mommy, I'm just afraid you're too soft-hearted, and others will take advantage of that weakness to hurt you. You're always kind to others but strict with yourself. I don't want you to be taken advantage of." She looked up with glistening eyes, feigning innocence like a child needing protection. Her face was so full of sincerity that an outsider would find it hard to doubt her. In the past, Madam Min might have softened, even shed tears of emotion, but today she merely lowered her head and lifted Minwoo's chin, her gaze scrutinizing every feature on a face that, the more she looked, the more foreign it seemed. Then she gave a faint smile, her voice gentle yet sharp as a blade. "I'm glad you care about your mother so much, but if I only lived by kindness, I fear I would have been torn apart by the old wolves in the business world long ago, not a single bone left." Finishing her words, she didn't bother to look back, taking my hand and calmly walking upstairs, leaving Minwoo standing there stunned, trembling in panic. As I passed, I met her eyes, which were filled with hatred, and I simply curled my lips into a cold smile, a silent warning. I secretly felt lucky that Madam Min was not blind, not rejecting her biological daughter for more than 10 years of affection with an adopted child. In this house, her word was supreme. As long as Madam Min was by my side, I would no longer be an outcast. I would have my own place, more solid than ever. My presence was nothing short of a warning bell, making Minwoo feel the approaching threat. She was not one to idly watch her fate twist. The very next morning, in the quiet expanse of the manor, an uninvited guest suddenly appeared. Eunwoo. As I stepped down from the 3rd floor, she rushed at me like a whirlwind, her hand reaching out to grab me. "Heirin?" I stopped on the last step, calmly leaning away to avoid her, my voice serene and indifferent. "What are you doing here?" My household registration had long been properly arranged by Madam Min. Apart from a few scattered memories of our past together, there was no longer any bond between Eunwoo and me. I had no reason to care what she thought, but clearly Eunwoo was unaware of this. Hearing my question, she erupted in anger. How dare you talk back? Didn't I just say a few words to you that day? Was it worth running away from home like that? If Minwoo hadn't kindly told me where you were, I almost had to call the police. Mid-scolding, her gaze suddenly landed on the high-end silk pajamas I was wearing, her eyes widening with fury. Heirin, how many times have I taught you? With your lowly status as an illegitimate child, you should know to be ashamed and live discreetly like a mouse. Who gave you the nerve to stay in the Song family house dressed so luxuriously? Her words were like a knife slashing at my face, deliberately exposing me in front of everyone, branding me as shameless, having tricked Madam Min into letting me return, harboring ill intentions. As expected, the maids in the living room immediately changed their expressions towards me, their gazes clearly showing contempt and distance. Minwoo stood by, playing the good person, gently frowning and pretending to mediate. Auntie, although Heirin might be a bit frivolous, you shouldn't speak so harshly. She has her pride too. As she spoke, she gently poured a glass of water and offered it to Eunwoo. Just a small gesture was enough to bring tears to Eunwoo's eyes, and she praised Minwoo lavishly. Truly worthy of the madam's daughter, such a graceful and elegant demeanor, unlike Heirin, who is selfish and lowly. As she spoke, she reached out to take the glass of water. At that very moment, a voice as cold as ice echoed from the fourth-floor hallway. If you cherish Minwoo so much, why don't you just adopt her as your daughter? Eunwoo flinched, her hand freezing in midair, instinctively looking up to find the owner of the voice. From above, Madam Min stood, calmly looking down. She didn't spare Eunwoo a single glance, her eyes falling directly on Minwoo, her red lips curving into a mocking smile. And didn't you just say yesterday that Eunwoo was the third party who ruined your mother's marriage? Yet today you're so eagerly intimate with her. I don't recall ever teaching you to be so hypocritical. Anyone would think Eunwoo was your real mother. Every single word was like a hammer blow straight to the heads of those with deceitful hearts. Minwoo, who was usually skilled at hiding her emotions, couldn't maintain her composure this time. Clink! The glass of water in her hand dropped, splashing water onto her elaborate dress. She stood there, dumbfounded, stammering, "Mommy." The room immediately fell silent, so suffocating that no one dared to breathe loudly. Only Eunwoo recovered her senses first, hurriedly trying to explain. "Madam Song, in the Min family home, please call me Madam Min." Madam Min coldly interrupted, her tone leaving no room for leniency. Eunwoo clenched her fists, utterly mortified. The title Madam Min was something she had always yearned for, yet now it was merely a boundary forever separating her, standing outside the door, struggling to control her humiliation. Eunwoo was forced to change her words. "Madam Min, you've misunderstood. Miss Minwoo is so noble I would never dare to presume." Madam Min chuckled softly, a deep meaning in her smile. "That depends on whose daughter she truly is." Finishing her words, she turned and bluntly dismissed her guest. "The Min family does not welcome outsiders, Miss Eunwoo. I ask you to leave." Immediately, 2 bodyguards stepped forward, standing on either side of Eunwoo, signaling her to depart. Though her heart was filled with resentment and indignation, Eunwoo could only grit her teeth and silently leave the mansion like a criminal being escorted away. Because if she didn't, she would be dragged out in an even more shameful and disgraceful manner. After Eunwoo was escorted out, Madam Min exited the elevator and descended the stairs. She only spared me a fleeting glance before her icy gaze shifted directly to Minwoo. Her voice rang out, filled with coldness. "If you're so fond of Eunwoo, why don't you just follow her and leave for good?" Minwoo's face instantly paled, her eyes welling up with tears. She frantically rushed forward, clutching Madam Min's arm as if it were her last lifeline. "Mommy, I have nothing to do with her. Please don't kick me out. Just now you called her auntie, now she's her. You change faces faster than turning a page." Madam Min looked at her with an indifferent gaze, and only when she saw the clear panic rising in Minwoo's eyes did she finally speak, her voice softening slightly. "How could I bear to kick you out? Your birthday is coming soon, and I'm preparing a very special gift for you." As she spoke, she gently removed Minwoo's hand. Hearing this, Minwoo stopped crying, her face beaming with a radiant smile. "I knew it, you always love me the most." From that day on, Madam Min's attitude towards her reverted to her usual gentle care, while towards me, she became distant and cold. Minwoo quickly resumed her familiar role, appearing obedient and adorable on the outside, but arrogant and provocative behind the scenes. In front of me, she smugly declared, "Heirin, I don't know what tricks you've played on my mother, but the only person she will ever love is me." Yet, in front of Madam Min, she transformed into a virtuous child, constantly clinging to her, every blink, every smile meticulously calculated. When my biological father, Cumin, came to the house, the three of them gathered for a happy dinner, while I could only stand outside, silently watching like an outsider. At that moment, Minwoo must have been filled with smug satisfaction, believing herself still a princess living in a halo of adoration. But she had no idea that a calm before the storm didn't mean a tranquil sea. On the highest floor of the Min Group headquarters, Madam Min sat leaning against the glass railing, a hot cup of coffee in her hand, her eyes gazing distantly at the vast sea of city lights below. Her voice slowly resonated like a prophecy. To destroy someone first, you must let them drown in their own delusions. I nodded, quietly replying, "Mom, I understand." Madam Min gave a slight nod, her eyes sweeping over me with satisfaction. "After you finish university, follow Mr. Doan to learn more. I hope you have the ability to steer the Min and Song corporations in the future." Beyond the title of mother, this woman was a warrior in the business world. She had built an empire with nothing but her intellect and courage, never faltering in the face of adversity. A mother's love was a great gift, but what I wanted to learn from her was even greater: power, reason, and the ability to survive. The coming-of-age ceremony for the two young ladies of the Song and Min families was highly anticipated by the elite, with media hot on their heels. As the center of attention, Minwoo had been meticulously attended to by a large team since early morning, from her hair and dress to her flawless makeup. Her close friends surrounded her, chattering excitedly, their eyes gleaming at the sight of the sparkling evening gown she wore. "Oh my God, Minwoo, isn't this that limited edition design from the current collection? I heard it sold out last year. Even many international celebrities couldn't get their hands on it, yet you're wearing it to the party." Minwoo lightly stroked the luxurious fabric of her dress, trying to maintain composure, but her eyes were full of pride. Her voice was as soft as honey. "I'm not really sure my mom prepared everything." That statement sent ripples through the room. "You're truly lucky. With a mother like that, all you have to do is sit back and enjoy." The praises were incessant, lifting Minwoo to cloud nine. But amidst that praising crowd, an indifferent voice suddenly cut through the lively atmosphere. "But didn't your father's other daughter recently move into Minwoo Manor? I heard Director Min is quite fond of her." This was no longer mere rumor. It was a blatant truth. This story had long permeated every corner of the aristocracy, like a strange wind blowing through a tranquil forest. Curiosity was an irresistible instinct, especially with sensational news like this, even more so when the story was so bizarre it made people question common sense. The clever ones easily noticed the instability hidden beneath that seemingly perfect exterior, and everyone was eager to expose the truth. Minwoo had to steel herself, ignoring the sarcastic glances that pricked at her like needles, forcing out a strained smile. "Because my mother is very forgiving. Forgiving. Forgiving enough to bring her husband's illegitimate child home, raising and pampering her like her own daughter." I silently hid in a secluded corner, my eyes never leaving her, my lips curled in contempt. In my heart, I awaited the moment everything would crumble, and she would experience a true nightmare. The birthday party officially began. Minwoo, wearing a sparkling tiara, lightly lifted the hem of her gown and walked onto the stage like a princess, under the watchful eyes of everyone present. She stood beside Kyungmin and Madam Min like a perfect family of three. The biggest highlight of the party was the ceremony of cutting the giant birthday cake together, a symbol of sacred bonding. Under Kyungmin's guidance, Minwoo took the long knife, preparing to complete the ritual. But at that very moment, Madam Min suddenly reached out and stopped her. "Wait," Minwoo froze, looking up in bewilderment. Not answering her, Madam Min turned to face the crowd and offered a faint smile. "Today is an important milestone in my daughter's life. Mr. Song and I have decided to each gift her 10% of the company's shares." The moment she finished speaking, a burst of applause erupted. A group of lawyers emerged from behind, carrying carefully prepared document trays. In each tray, pens were already placed, papers open to the signature section, not a single detail missed. The entire plan seemed to have been orchestrated beforehand, just waiting for Minwoo to sign and confirm. She was almost stunned speechless with emotion, her eyes red-rimmed, looking at Madam Min and Kyungmin with unconcealed gratitude. Kyungmin placed a hand on her shoulder, speaking softly, "This is a gift from both your father and mother." Without hesitation, Minwoo quickly signed all the documents. Without even reviewing them, the lawyer collected all the papers and presented them to Madam Min for a final check. After full confirmation, she handed them back to the lawyer, calmly saying, "Excuse me, please have these notarized." Minwoo's face lit up, her smile as radiant as if she had just received the most precious thing in her life. "Thank you, Mom." "No need to thank me so quickly," Madam Min replied. Her voice was still gentle, but her eyes were growing colder. "I have another gift, an even more special one." Finishing her words, she stepped forward, took the microphone from the MC, her grave expression immediately causing the atmosphere to fall silent. "Now, I wish to announce something of utmost importance." Minwoo trembled slightly, a vague sense of anticipation rising within her. But a second later, Madam Min's words struck reality like a bomb. "The daughter I have raised and cared for over the past 18 years, Minwoo, is in fact not my biological child." The entire hall froze in that moment. An unexpected lightning bolt struck a clear sky. Below the stage, the murmurs grew louder, doubt completely overshadowing trust. The eyes that had once praised and regarded her as a true heiress now collectively turned to suspicion, even disdain. Minwoo felt as if she was caught in an inescapable whirlwind. She was dizzy, her head spinning, her steps faltering as if about to collapse. Meanwhile, Kyumin, who always portrayed himself as a model father, was equally stunned. When he saw the crowd beginning to speculate about the child swap and associating it with him, his face instantly changed. He angrily charged forward, shouting, "Are you insane? Minwoo is my daughter, the child you carried for 9 months and 10 days. How can she not be our child?" The moment he finished speaking, he lunged forward, intending to snatch the microphone from Madam Min's hand, and ordered his bodyguards to immediately seize her. However, this party was entirely organized by Madam Min alone. From the MC to the logistics team, from security to the servers, everyone was her staff. Just as Kyumin reached out, 2 burly bodyguards swiftly rushed forward, locking his arms from behind with decisive, unsparing movements. Arg! The chilling sound of bones dislocating echoed through the hall. His arms were twisted behind him, dropping limply like a puppet with broken strings. After dealing with the would-be disruptor, Madam Min returned to the stage, her expression calm as if nothing had happened. She surveyed the hall, which was now frozen in fright, then returned to the main part of her announcement. "You guessed correctly. The girl I brought home not long ago is my biological daughter." Her voice wasn't loud, but every word resonated, striking directly into the hearts of the listeners. Then she looked at me, her eyes full of affection. "Heirin, you are the legitimate heir of both the Min and Song families. Come here and greet everyone." I calmly stood up and walked forward at her call. Immediately, countless eyes fixated on me, scrutinizing, curious, some astonished, others wary. At this moment, Minwoo, who had been dazed like a lost soul, suddenly shrieked, her voice almost a scream. "No, it can't be, not that girl. Mommy, I'm your biological daughter." She lunged towards me like a whirlwind, her face contorted with panic, both hands aiming to forcefully shove me. I was standing near the edge of the stage, almost 3 meters high. A single push would be enough to put me in danger. But I had anticipated this, so I skillfully spun around, grabbed the hem of her dress, and leaned aside, dodging her. "Heirin, are you hurt?" Madam Min immediately rushed forward, pulling me into her embrace protectively, her trembling hands checking for any marks on my body. Thanks to my quick reflexes, I was unharmed. But the attacker was not so lucky. Minwoo, having missed her target, stumbled forward, her body uncontrollable, crashing hard onto the floor with a dull thud. Her head hit forcefully, and she immediately began to convulse, white foam forming at her mouth, her limbs trembling wildly as if having an epileptic seizure. "Minwoo!" Eunwoo's desperate scream tore through the heavy atmosphere. She rushed forward in a panic, but feared touching her would worsen her daughter's condition, so she stood frozen, her eyes helplessly watching her daughter writhe in pain. She wanted to call for an ambulance, but groping in her bag, she realized her phone wasn't there. This party had a rule that guests had to hand in their phones at the lobby if they weren't on a special list, to prevent secret filming or recording. With no other option, Eunwoo could only bow her head, her voice trembling as she pleaded with those around her. "Please, someone, please call an ambulance for me." But the crowd paid no heed. Everyone shrank back, avoiding her as if she carried a contagious calamity. Watching her daughter gasping for breath, Eunwoo's eyes slowly filled with despair. She understood that without Madam Min's nod, no one here would dare to help. Thud, she fell to her knees. Director Min, please. That year, Minwoo was just a tiny baby. If she was swapped, it wasn't her fault. For 18 years, she called you mother, lived with you as your own flesh and blood. Please, don't let her die. I can pay any price, just please save her. Crying, she repeatedly slammed her head against the ground, her forehead hitting so hard it tore, blood flowing like a stream, staining the polished tile floor beneath her feet. The people around couldn't help but shudder with emotion. Indeed, mother's love is boundless, so pitiful. But that so-called heart-wrenching maternal love was the very thing that had buried my life and Madame Min's in the previous lifetime. Eunwoo remained on her knees, blood dripping onto the floor, while Madame Min didn't stir, her expression unwavering for even a moment. It wasn't until Minwoo's face turned purplish-blue and her breathing became shallow that Madame Min leisurely spoke, her voice cold as ice. Bowing your head in front of so many reporters, are you trying to portray me as a heartless, inhumane monster? The moment she finished speaking, Eunwoo, who was about to continue bowing, froze, her blood-streaked face looking up, frantically shaking her head. I didn't mean that, I wouldn't dare. Madame Min's lips curled into a faint, cold smile, then she subtly waved her hand. Guards, call the medical team for first aid. Watching her daughter being wheeled away by medical staff, Eunwoo felt as if shackles had been removed. She collapsed onto the ground, her body limp, completely devoid of strength. At this moment, I gently stepped out of Madame Min's embrace, approached the woman who had just been crying and pleading amidst her own blood, and sat down, my gaze as icy as a dagger piercing her very soul. Now is the time for us to settle the debts of our past lives. The butler, a discerning man, seeing Eunwoo suddenly kneel and plead in front of so many people, had secretly instructed the staff to discreetly and orderly guide the guests out of the hall. A short while later, the once noisy ballroom became deserted, with only the sparse afterglow of the lights and heavy breathing remaining in the chilling silence. Realizing she had been left in an empty space, Eunwoo felt choked by an intangible fear. She crawled backward, trembling, her voice choked, trying to cling to a sliver of hope. Heir, no matter what, I'm the one who raised you since you were little. Even if you don't feel gratitude, there's still a bond. I burst out laughing, unable to believe that even now she dared to claim credit as a birth parent. Should I be grateful to her for swapping my identity right after I was born, turning me into an outsider in my own family? Or should I be indebted for the years she manipulated and trampled on me, forcing me to live like a shadow, considered dirty and unworthy of existence? Or perhaps I should thank her for conspiring with Cumin to blind my mother, allowing Minwoo to poison her food and medicine meal by meal, making my mother slowly waste away and die in agony? I paused for a moment, my voice lowered but sharp as ice. You call that love? Cumin had never been sincere with anyone. He didn't love Eunwoo, nor did he care for Minwoo. The only thing he craved was the immense fortune of the Min family. From the moment Eunwoo desperately tried to get into his bed, a vicious plan had been concocted, swapping children to seize inheritance rights. He promised Eunwoo a generous share after the deed was done. And she, being reckless for money, saw an opportunity to change her life and didn't hesitate. If her biological daughter could assume the identity of the Min-song heiress, wouldn't that be a glorious triumph? Originally, when Madame Min and Cumin first married, there was a period of deep affection between them. That's why Madame Min easily fell into the sweet trap he had set. When everything unraveled, Eunwoo, like a trapped rat in a corner, immediately denied all wrongdoing, shifting all responsibility onto Cumin. He forced me. Heir, no matter how great my fault, I raised you safely until you grew up. You don't know, but when he handed you over to me, he told me to find a way to accidentally cause your death. If I hadn't been soft-hearted, would you even be alive to meet Director Min now? Don't you think I have a point? Deflecting. I restrained myself from her limitless audacity, then without another word, I swung my arm, grabbing a heavy wine bottle nearby, and without hesitation, smashed it directly onto Eunwoo's head. Whatever logic you have, you can tell the police. Minwoo woke up in the hospital and coincidentally heard that her mother had been taken by the police. Her expression didn't change at all. The only thing she cared about was how to regain Madame Min's trust. Mommy, all of this was secretly orchestrated by father and Eunwoo. I truly didn't know anything. Didn't know? Madame Min chuckled faintly, her eyes piercing as if seeing into the depths of Minwoo's heart. Then what is this? She didn't need many words. She just coldly tossed a stack of documents onto the tiled floor in front of a kneeling, pleading Minwoo. Minwoo trembled as she picked them up and opened them. Just a glance at the title made her limbs go numb. Toxicology test results in food. The truth lay bare, stark, and undeniable. Minwoo fell silent, her eyes filled with terror, her hands trembling as she clutched the papers, tears streaming down incessantly. "Mommy, do you truly remember nothing? For 18 years, I've been by your side. Does that affection mean nothing to you? You once said I was your treasure, the most precious thing in your life. So what if we're not blood-related? We don't lack anything else." Butler, escort the guest out. Without a trace of hesitation, Madam Min turned and left, abandoning Minwoo to sink into collapse and despair. The story of the true and false identities of the two girls shook the entire Min group like a storm. The media, shareholders, and market all clamored for answers, forcing Madam Min to urgently handle everything, leaving no time to play the emotional mother Minwoo expected. In the end, Minwoo, once a proud heiress, was driven out of the mansion like a stray dog, with no one to take her in. But she still clung to a last illusion in her mind. Mommy still loves me. Otherwise, why would she transfer 10% of the shares to me? I watched Minwoo's self-deceiving expression, unable to suppress a cold laugh that resonated in my throat. Seeing that she still harbored hope, I didn't hesitate to deal a fatal blow to that last illusion. "Do you really believe you signed a stock transfer document?" She flinched slightly, her eyes wavering. "What are you talking about?" I calmly replied. "That wasn't a transfer contract at all. It was a document confirming your voluntary renunciation of all inheritance rights to the assets. My mother once said that everything I lost in the past 18 years, she would reclaim every penny. Of course, she wouldn't leave you even a single cent. What you signed was a document agreeing to hand over all your shares, real estate, and everything related to you without holding anything back." Minwoo's face contorted. She couldn't bear the cruel truth. Her legs gave way, and she collapsed onto the floor like a soulless corpse. From that moment on, she truly had nothing left in her hands, literally. As for Kyungmin, he was not the type to act honorably like Madam Min. In the business world, he had made enemies everywhere. Among those resentful individuals, there was one man whose family was torn apart, assets dissipated, and debts piled up because of Kyungmin's betrayal. After losing everything, the man found himself completely cornered and eventually devised a cruel plan: kidnap Kyungmin's daughter to force him to pay a ransom. In the previous life, when he discovered I was Kyungmin's illegitimate child, he feared risks and spared no one, kidnapping me as well to ensure certainty. He wanted Kyungmin to experience the pain of losing a loved one, so he staged a bloody drama, forcing my biological father to choose between his two daughters. But in this life, his plan had changed. The targets of the kidnapping were Minwoo and Mr. Song himself. Perhaps because he had lived in hiding for too long, he had become obsolete, unaware that the two pawns he held in his hand had long been kicked off the chessboard by the world. The ransom call came in, a hoarse voice on the other end of the phone. "Director Min, your husband and adopted daughter are currently in my hands. If you want them to live, prepare 5 billion for each of them. Tomorrow at 3:00 p.m. at the Wisteria Dreamslope, bring the money, exchange people for cash." With that, he hung up abruptly, leaving no room for negotiation. I glanced at Madam Min, our eyes met, and we both burst out laughing simultaneously. What a farce. He thought he could extort her using two people who had already been discarded. 10 billion to ransom two items that had lost all value, truly a pipe dream. The following afternoon, precisely at 4 o'clock, an anonymous video was sent. As soon as I opened it, I recognized the chillingly familiar scene. A treacherous, steep cliff, just like in my memories from the previous life. On two tree branches extending from the cliff face, Minwoo and Kyungmin were bound tightly, suspended in midair. Two henchmen stood nearby, sharp knives in their hands. A single light slash would cut the rope, sending them plunging to their deaths. Kyungmin, having once navigated the cutthroat business world, still maintained some composure, attempting to negotiate. "If you want money, let me go. I can pay any amount." The kidnapper sneered, his voice distorted and garbled like an echo from the underworld. "Your money? I don't trust it. I only trust your wife. Call her." He wore a grotesque mask, his face like a nightmare, every action exuding terrifying pressure. The moment he finished speaking, he suddenly kicked the rope. Kyungmin was immediately swung back and forth, his body swaying as if he could fall at any moment. Few knew that this man harbored a primal fear of heights. When he was first captured, he had tried to feign calm. But now, with his life quite literally hanging over an abyss, that composure shattered. He screamed, almost desperately, "All right, I'll talk." "Don't kill me." The kidnapper immediately pulled the rope taut, bringing the camera closer to Kyungmin's sweat-soaked face. Kyungmin's face was ashen like a corpse, his breathing rapid, and after a moment he spoke in a trembling voice, "Min Junhee, please save me. Whatever conditions you have, I'll agree to them all." Save him? Why should she save him? If Kyungmin died, wouldn't the Song family's empire soon fall into Madam Min's hands without firing a single shot? Even if there were objections within the Song family, once the news of the chairman's death spread, the Song group would inevitably be thrown into disarray, and morale would waver. Instead of bothering to intervene, it was better to seize the opportunity of a leaderless snake and collaborate with external forces, quickly reshuffling the chessboard and seizing the largest share of benefits for herself. And in reality, Madam Min did not miss that opportunity. She had her technical department trace the IP address from the threatening video and then sent the kidnapper a surveillance clip. It showed his family member jumping from a high floor to their death, unable to withstand the pressure of debt collection. That counterattack drove him mad. In a fit of irrational rage, he swung his knife and killed Kyungmin on the spot. Of course, Madam Min didn't completely ignore it. Immediately after the video was sent, she proactively reported it to the police, but the response time couldn't be instantaneous. By the time rescue forces arrived, Kyungmin was covered in blood, having died from excessive blood loss. Minwoo, fortunately, survived but not unscathed. During her escape, her leg was broken, requiring urgent medical attention. Not long after, calls from the hospital continuously reached Madam Min, requesting payment for medical expenses. As a civilized person, she still fully paid the hospital fees as well as the post-surgery recovery costs for Minwoo. But immediately afterwards, she published a document terminating all relations. As soon as the news broke, the online community erupted. Reporters who had been present at the coming-of-age ceremony that day didn't miss the opportunity, immediately sharing every detail, causing the incident to explode across all social media platforms. Keywords like child swap scandal between two elite families, shocking truth about two swapped heiresses, immediately soared to the top of search rankings, holding their position for 3 consecutive days. The official account of the Min Group was besieged by thousands of comments, all kinds of opinions pouring in like a flood. While public opinion was at its peak, Madam Min organized a large-scale press conference. Amidst a barrage of questions, she only selected a few formal ones to answer. Then, she solemnly declared a single sentence that silenced the entire hall. From now on, whether it's the Min family or the Song family, there will be only one sole heir, my biological daughter, Hyerin. That name echoed like thunder on a clear day, deeply engraved into the minds of both the media and the public. My mother had skillfully transformed Kyungmin's death and the child swap scandal into a stepping stone to bring me back in the most glorious way possible. At that moment, I stood before the glass of the prison cell, facing the one who had once plunged my life into misery. I handed Eunwoo a tablet to watch Madam Min's interview. See, in the end, the person she chose was me. You wasted your youth raising a sewer rat, hoping it would lay golden eggs, but in reality, it was just a stepping stone for me to reclaim everything. I switched to another video. The image showed Minwoo writhing on a hospital bed. Due to the brutal blow from the kidnapper, her leg muscles had necrotized and had to be amputated. In the video, she ceaselessly pounded on the spot where her leg used to be, crying and screaming as if driven mad. "Minwoo, oh Minwoo, mother was wrong, I was wrong to you," Eunwoo mumbled, choked with sobs from the other side of the glass. She completely collapsed. She tore at her hair, slammed her head against the glass, blood staining her forehead. No one could stop her. As if only by self-infliction could she atone, even partially, for the pain and despair her daughter was enduring. What a pity it was too late. In my previous life, I had lived as if dead, buried in helplessness, while Madam Min had quietly passed away from long-term poisoning. But in the present, I had everything returned to me, while Minwoo had lost everything, forced to accept a life of disability. Eunwoo was sent to prison, living each day tormented by agonizing regret. Perhaps for some, this might not be enough to call it justice. But sometimes, physical punishment isn't as horrific as mental torture. They would have to exist for the rest of their lives in shame, destitution, and bone-deep regret. The visiting hour ended. I gently placed the receiver down, turned my back, and walked out of the cold room. Behind me, Eunwoo's frenzied cries were muffled by the thick glass. as if the tragedies I had endured in my previous life were now firmly locked away in the past, forever unable to return.